Hello again, sweet darlings. Welcome back to my channel if you're a returning subscriber, and thank you so much for coming back for another video. And if you're new here, let me introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a Catholic convert, and I release weekly videos here all about faith, femininity, and homemaking, and really about my journey from being a feminist and someone with no faith to finding the Catholic faith, embracing traditional gender roles, and having two beautiful daughters. So you'll see them featured quite a bit in my videos. So if that's the kind of thing that you like, kind of real motherhood, instinctual motherhood, and embracing your femininity, then I hope you'll consider subscribing. But today's video is something new for my channel. It's the first time that I have interviewed someone. So this comes with a little caveat that I did this wonderful interview with Sister Loretta-Maria of the Habit Forming Sisters. She's currently based in Georgia, but they are planning to build a beautiful monastery to safeguard the traditional Latin Mass in Florida. So that is what this video is a little bit about that story, about why they'd like to build a new monastery, and also Sister Loretta-Maria's faith journey, her vocation story, and a little bit of background into a document called Cor Orans, which was released by the Vatican under Pope Francis. Some of you may be aware of it already, but I wasn't. So I was someone who would have considered myself very interested in the traditions of the church and the traditional Latin Mass, and yet I hadn't heard about how religious vocations, and specifically kind of more traditional religious vocations, discalced nuns away from the world, living in silence, very much like Saint Therese, who I love, that is under threat because of this document. So if you haven't heard of it, I really hope that you'll stick around and learn a little bit more from Sister Loretta-Maria. She has such a beautiful story. I think she speaks with real kind of honesty and humor. So I hope you'll enjoy the interview. And the caveat is that I recorded this on Google Meets, and forgive me because it's my first time doing this and my first time in such a long time doing anything over like Zoom or Google Meets, that I didn't know you had to press a button to record it side by side. So the video does flip back between Sister Loretta-Maria's kind of screen, and she hasn't got her image up because, for a discalced nun, you wouldn't be facing the world. You would be behind your grill. You'd be in your monastery, away from the world, leading your silent life of prayer. But because they're trying to build this monastery, she has to be kind of the public face or the voice for the group of sisters that she's leading, trying to found this new monastery. So she is, doing interviews and speaking on the internet, but you don't see her face because that is in keeping with the charisms of her order of Saint Teresa of Avila. So that's just a little caveat there. And my apologies that it's not side by side so you can see my reactions while Sister is speaking. Therefore, I would recommend, if you have this maybe playing in the background while you're cooking dinner, or maybe while you're driving, or just have it in as if you were listening to a podcast. I'm really sorry that this time kind of the video itself isn't going to be that stimulating, but I do have other videos lined up with Sister Loretta-Maria, and I will make sure that the technical difficulties are not there for next time. So that's just my little brief summary of the issue I experienced, but I still think it's a really wonderful interview. The story is really one of perseverance. It's about faith, it's about vocation. How does that come about, and what happens when kind of your vocation and the charisms of your order, the traditions of Carmelite life, for example, come under threat? Do you bow to those pressures? Do you give in to kind of the way of the world and the way of the modern church, or do you try to build something new? And Sister Loretta-Maria has chosen to try to build something new, not just for herself and her community of sisters, but also for future vocations, future nuns, and also for our church as a whole, to safeguard those traditions of the Latin Mass, to safeguard other traditions of the church, and hopefully, in the future, bring us more saints like Saint Therese of Lisieux, who did live a life away from the world and yet had such wisdom at such a young age, was so close to God at such a young age. And we all have a lot to learn from people like that, as well as Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. So without further ado, I really hope you'll enjoy this interview. Please do drop any questions or comments below for Sister that I can pass on, or get in touch with them directly. In the description, I'll be linking the full Cor Orans document if you'd like to read it. I'll also be linking to Sister Loretta-Maria's Habit Forming Sisters website, where you can support their building project. They've got an Etsy shop. You can donate directly, and they're also looking for donations in kind if you can help with maybe a skill that you have, or some time if you're based near to where they're planning to build the monastery, or even in Georgia, where Sister Loretta-Maria is at the moment. But without further ado, let's dive in, and thank you so much for tuning into another video. God bless.
It's supposed to be, as Carmelites, we normally don't do this kind of stuff. We have our happy little monastery, and we're enclosed. Carmelites yeah, we have a hidden life. You normally see a Carmelite through a grill,
Yeah.
and that covers your face so much. So now doing this, like, we're building our monastery, and in 2025, we really can't be silent about this.
Mm.
We have to, like, go out and tell people. Well, we don't go physically out.
Yeah.
Thank God. Actually, thank God the internet exists, because we're going to use it in our hidden life way, where we can promote all this online, and then we can still have our hermit life, and I can be praying, connecting with my sisters. But yeah, when I'm doing these interviews, I just don't show my face, just because that's more Carmelite. And also, I'm not used to being on the internet and doing these interviews. I'm actually, like, horrendously, like, stage fright nervous, but I'm the more extrovert of the Carmelites among us. So they're like,
Yeah.
Sister, you go in front of everyone and tell them whatever, and we'll pray and, like, make rosaries in the background or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, but when I'm trying to do an interview, like, as soon as, like, the first question hits me, I forget how to breathe, and I'm just rambling for, like, the longest. I feel like all of my first answers are, like, so long. But anyway.
Definitely praise
Mhm.
God for the internet so that you don't have to, yeah, go out and kind of lobby and advocate for what you're trying to do physically.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason that I wanted to, have you on after, you reached out to me is that I thought, well, obviously I'm a new convert, so I don't know a lot of the stuff about the faith compared to other people, but I would have thought that I was um, kind of aware of some of the stuff that
Mhm.
was, say, threatening tradition in the church because, like, we love the traditional Latin Mass. So I knew about that, and I knew about, like, what had been happening under Francis with, is it Traditionis Custodes?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I knew about that document, and I'd never heard of Cor Orans, and I had
Mhm.
literally no idea that kind of religious life was under threat in the way
Yeah.
that it is. So, that was really eye-opening to me, and I think it will be for other people.
But
Um,
really, you're not alone, because this document was so, like, hush hush. Like,
mm,
you didn't even, like, know about it until it, like, slapped the nun in the face. Like, hey, your
yeah,
monastery is now associated and affiliated with this Korans Federated Carmelite order that they have now taken and created. And it's
yeah,
like, so many things. Like, I've had these Federation sisters come to our monasteries and just say, "Oh, you didn't make your vows under Quran, so yeah, you've been like these sisters, like, they've been nuns for like 60 years," and it's like, well, you gotta have it under Qurans, or else go find a nursing home, or the ones that've been there who are, like,
yeah. So
dying
you kind of,
of old age for 60 years,
yeah,
and the young ones like me, they just looked at me like, "Oh, well, your vow of chastity doesn't matter. You can walk out the door today and get married." I'm like, "Excuse me? Like, what are
mm,
you saying? Like, just
mm,
telling a nun her vow of chastity has no meaning anymore?" Like, that just, like, blew my mind, because it's like, it's a vow of chastity to God,
mm,
Like, I'm
mm.
not gonna break that just for fun.
Yeah,
What are you
no,
talking about? Like, so all these different things, like, really opened our eyes. And
mm,
we're a lot of us are actually kind of like you, basically, like, in the sense of, like, conversion. Well, we're Catholic, but we kind of, like, converted to the tradition. And my particular monastery, we were having Latin Mass. We finally got it, like, once a week on
mm,
Mondays. It's awesome. And we were going to transition into, like, hey, let's just do this forever. And then the
yeah,
devil was like, oh, no, 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 what are they doing? Put a stop to that. Get the Korans thing in there, because Korans had been a thing for like 5 years. Like,
okay,
when I entered and became a nun, it was already a thing, but my
hmm,
monastery was like, never heard about it. So all of a sudden, it was suddenly a thing, and I was like, yeah, because we got Latin Mass. That's why it's a thing.
yeah.
That's why it's, like, such a thing right now.
Yeah, it
Get rid
suddenly
of the
draws the
nuns.
attention, doesn't it? It's like, as long as you're kind of flying under the radar and not specifically trying to be traditional, it seems like you're kind of left in peace. But as soon as someone says, well, I think we should have more Latin Mass, or, no, you can't give
Mhm.
blessings that way, or, there is kind of, yeah, a role
Yeah, and they'll give
separate.
other reasons why they will be suppressing these monasteries, but,
Mm,
like, my obvious understanding was, like, we just got Latin Mass in here for, like, a solid year. We were finally doing at least once a week,
mm.
sometimes more depending on who the priest was, and we would just bribe him with cookies or something? So, like, come on, you can do more than one day, right? Right? Just, what we
We'll
won't
feed
we
you
won't
well.
So it was too obvious to me, like, this is the devil. This is not like of God. Like, how do you finally get Latin Mass into a monastery that's never had it for like 60 years? And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's going to be suppressed. Like, God would not do that. And that would
Yeah,
not be his will. This is
yeah.
obviously the devil. Like, I'm going to find random things that is wrong with you guys that have like make no sense. And we're going to just suppress you. Like, okay, that's fine. I mean,
And I mean, yeah, I haven't really looked into it in terms of, as you said, like the other reasons that are given why these monasteries are suppressed, but kind of reading between the lines, is that kind of an attempt to like besmirch your name, like kind of say that you've done something or, not played by the rules to make you look bad? Um
yeah, like one thing is I remember how they were very big on all of a sudden the majority of your vocations have to come from the diocese that you live in. And I'm like, what if someone's from like, like Kansas and they just came
yeah.
here, because they wanted to go to this monastery or whatever. And so like my particular monastery was like a melting pot of different people from different cultures actually coming here
Mm,
as a mission, because like this particular diocese does not have religious vocations or like priests. Even like
mm,
we have very very few priests. And this, like, I don't really say this much, but like I was the first vocation to this Carmelite monastery in like decades who actually persevered to make vows. And
mm,
it's because like I came in there like, hey mother, let's like do Latin Mass. And all of a sudden girls were looking at us like, oh my gosh,
mm,
you're doing Latin Mass. I want
yeah.
to join. But when
Mm,
the Quran stuff like took us over and it was like forced upon us, they were very much like, no, you're not allowed to accept these girls. No, like these sisters like can't be here anymore. It was just like chopping us down. And it was like, no, we were
yeah.
doing great. We were getting vocations. Like I was a witness to this. I was like, this is the power of the Latin Mass here. People are like actually excited about us for one.
Yeah.
So they will find things to like pick at different monastery. And the main thing was just this random, like everybody has to be from this geographic location, like this city even. And it's like,
Mm,
that makes no sense. That's not how vocation works. God calls you and you
yeah.
go. If
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
supposed to go across the world, that's what God called you to do. You
Yeah.
just do it. Like you don't, there's so many saints who like, were missionaries all over the world, and they weren't like in their monastery where they were born. Like it
Well, and they
makes no
were kind of, yeah, they were needed to bring a different perspective, weren't they? Because if you
sense.
just always have people from the same region, kind of, having vocations in that region, you're not gaining the new perspective or like a different background in faith, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that is crazy to me. And what you said also in the interview that I watched the other day, where you were saying about these, nuns who obviously have taken these vows and are supposed to be living this life of hidden light, like,
Yeah.
away from the world. And they're now facing a situation because their monasteries have been suppressed where they have to go and get a 9 to 5. I mean, I don't know how.
Yeah.
I don't know
Like,
how we don't know about that. Like, I don't know why I don't know about that. Why is it not in the mainstream Catholic news? Because I think that's a travesty, you
yeah,
know?
like as the sister, we make a vow of obedience that is to God, to the Blessed Virgin Mary of Mount Carmel, and to the superior of our community that we vote for ourselves. So, like,
Mm,
we're not like, making vows to some random person who lives in Indiana. I have no idea what she's all about, and she doesn't know
yeah.
my, vocation. Like, you make the vow to your superior of your
Mm,
monastery, and it's according to the rule and constitutions of Carmel, not to Qurans, not
mm,
to woke nonsense, not to
mm.
synodal way of whatever. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if we have to like do things that are against Teresa of Avila and what she taught us, that breaks my vow of obedience. I cannot justify that in my heart. And so many sisters, either their monastery gets suppressed because they're not going to have it, and they just, the Qurans comes in and takes everything and runs, or they have to just leave and go live their life now as hermits. And that's where I've connected with different sisters who actually have been related to wanting to join my old monastery, or they heard about the building
Mm,
project. They're like, I've been waiting for this for years, sister. So anyway,
mm,
but in the midst of living as hermits, gotta sustain yourself. You're not a monastery where people are giving you
Yeah.
donations. So some of them are like, sister, I have to go and get a job, and I'm scared because I'm going to keep praying, but I have to go get a job, and that's like so out of my like existence and vocation. Like, no, I understand. Do we got to do? Get yourself stable. I'm trying to build this as fast as I can because I'm the physical public face
Yeah.
of the building. I'm the builder for the nuns, so most of them can just calm down and take care of their what they need to do and then pray. We connect with each other on a spiritual level and share community like that. But so I'm trying to like for everyone to say, I'm trying my hardest to build this as fast as possible. And the Lord has been opening the doors. Like I can't believe we got this far. We got the architect. We have this beautiful 10 acres and it's ours. No one can come in and take it from us because made sure that we nuns own this property and no one can come in and say, oh, that's mine now. And our assets for the fund, the building fund, that belongs to us. So we're learning from the fall of our monasteries in a sense, like God put us through that to learn, okay, well, this is how you protect your monastery from that happening. And so all these things like are coming together, but the sisters are just very eager to like live the life together because it's a whole different understanding when you're together with women of the same mind and the vows that you have and we help each other. Like that's the life that we're called to. We were not called to be actually living by ourselves hermits. That's a whole nother vocation. So they're very eager and praying for this and doing what they can. Some of them make rosaries and some of them are helping me out with other like monastic aspects of getting this thing right. But we just need some more help with the fundraising. So that's why we're doing all this like, hi everyone, please donate today.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just one of those things when you're trying to, build something new, and obviously you haven't got, say like a power that be. In an ideal world you would, who would say like, yeah, of course this should just happen, but because you're going against, as you said, Korans and kind of in a way the establishment, I suppose, you have to strike out on your own. Before we get into a little bit more about the monastery and like what's proposed, because I do want to discuss that. You touched on a couple times kind of, the charisms of Saint Teresa of Avila, and obviously you're saying like that's a specific vocation that these other women, these other nuns, feel as well. They're not called to a different vocation. So could you just, for myself and also for, people watching who might not know what those kind of key charisms are, could you explain them and then also just briefly say kind of how those are in conflict with what Korans is asking Discalced nuns to do?
So I think the best image of what our charism is actually Our Lady, because she is supposed to emphasize and embody the contemplative life. And everything that Our Lady is, that is what we are trying to emulate and express. And especially the Carmelite order has been dubbed by Our Lady as Our Lady's Order. This is the Order of Mary. And because we are especially called to have that hidden life of Nazareth and live that out. So in that life, you just like read in the Bible about Mary and how she was silent in the sense of like she didn't talk unless it was necessary. That's the main part of our charism, that silence is one of the greatest virtues because it actually is the most charitable of the virtues. You wouldn't really think of that because you would think, I got to talk to these people and let them know that I love them, that I care about them. But actually, if you have silence cultivates love better because it's that understanding that we are all together as a family of sisters, of nuns, and that togetherness, that silent being is love itself, and that's like all we need. And then coming in communion with God in prayer, like vocal prayer of the prayer of words, and then meditative prayer, the prayer of images and feeling and passion, that all is supposed to be springboarding us into contemplative prayer, which is the prayer of silent love. And that is just you are with God and God is with you and he knows you and you are knowing him, and that's all you need to know. Like, you don't have to think anymore, be anywhere, just love him. And it's kind of just like your heart just beating silently inside of you. That's how the contemplative life is supposed to be. We're the beating heart that's silently there, but we're putting all the blood through the body, all the graces through our prayers. So silence is the main focus. Emulating our Lady Mary, that's where it comes from. And basically prayer. Like, we are not teachers in the sense of going out to school and teaching people. We do teach in the sense if someone comes to the monastery and they want to know more about the faith or this spiritual life, we teach like that. We're not nurses in the sense of going to the hospital and taking care of the sick, but we do have a motherly nursing way of taking care of ourselves and our sisters. But prayer is the ultimate work that we do. So that's the Carmelite. We pray and we love God so that way other people can do his physical will in the world. And in that sense, we're bolstering them to love God and work and pray at the same time. So that's why we're so needed in this world to pray for people.
No, definitely. And I think that was something that really, struck me when I was looking more into, obviously, like, the Carmelite way of life, because I have very limited experience with it other than knowing of Saint Therese of Lisieux, who, as when you become a Catholic, you kind of become aware of these more famous, perhaps
Yes.
more modern saints. And yeah, just what you said about kind of the beating heart, like that silent, like beating with God. I think that is something that really comes across in her writings, just the love that she had for our Lord and how much that just like infused everything that she did. I think that's why, she is an example. She speaks to so many people across time. She's so powerful because although she was young and she, you could say she doesn't have much life experience, but she came to know God in such a profound way by being away from the world. And just knowing that there's kind of communities like that who are just they spend their time praying for the church, praying for people they don't know. Obviously you said like silence is the key aspect, prayer is the key aspect. Again, we've mentioned Qur'ans a couple of times, and maybe people won't know what that is. I will link it in the video description to the original document in case people want to read the whole thing, should they be so inclined. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Maybe I'll also include a summary. But how does that document kind of threaten those aspects of, the charism of Saint Teresa of Avila?
Well, the main thing that a lot of sisters have expressed to me is that it's trying to take the contemplative life and turn it into the active order of nuns, or sisters who go out and, they go to like meetings. They have sometimes they have these little like conventions where they all come together and do like educational, like, learning about whatever. But Teresa of Avila was a hidden life spirituality. You don't go out into the world and travel and get in the car and go whichever way they want to send you. You go to your little mountain of Carmel. That's your monastery. Your every monastery of the Carmelite order is supposed to be a new little Mount Carmel, and you go there like the hermits of old. You're with your community and you pray together in silence. You help each other out in charity, and you just focus on loving God and praying for the world, not being of the world and going into the world and work. Even though like the active religious orders, they do work for the Lord in the world, but we are supposed to be away from the world. So Corans has been trying to pull contemplative life out of the monastery and get them basically on the road and doing things. There's another aspect where it's turned into like how the active orders would have like a mother house over the daughter houses, and there's kind of like in their way of doing it, it's a very good connection because you keep the different houses connected with each other. But Corans is doing it where there's a sister president. I don't know why they want to call her president. That's very not Carmelite. And she controls like 14 other monasteries, And if she wants to take a sister from this monastery and move her all the way over there, she picks her up and moves her over there, no questions asked. If she, oh, you have money over here in this monastery, but I want the money to go over here to this random monastery on the other side of the country, and the money wasn't for them. Everyone who donated to this monastery, you wanted your money to go to these nuns, correct?
Yeah.
Correct. But they can take the money and put it wherever they want. So, and even the prioress, that's what we call the mother superior of our local monastery, she doesn't even get to decide if her novices can make vows. That's up to the president and her council. And it's like, I don't even know these people. I don't live with them. They don't live with me. They cannot see me on a daily basis living out my life as a nun. How would they have known I was meant to be a vocation here? It's
And then
really ridiculous. Like, and
and, and then how could they make a decision about whether they should move you if they haven't known you? And
yeah,
then just it's kind of like a regional manager who comes for a meeting, like in retail. I used to work in retail, and you've got a regional manager who doesn't know you. They don't work in the shop, and then they just come in and they're like, "Oh, you should change this, you should change that. Why don't you do things this way?" And it's like,
yes,
well,
exactly,
because we know our customers and we know our
exactly.
local area.
And
That is,
even
yeah.
the one thing I was going to mention, the meetings that they want the nuns to go to, like, you have to go to these meetings in order to make vows. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I do my prayers and my work in the monastery. That Teresa of Avila, that was enough for her. Okay, the
Yeah.
mother superior thinks you're ready, you can go make vows. But here you go to these meetings, and I saw a list one time of what they were trying to teach, and it sounded like critical race theory for nuns, social
Mhm.
equality for nuns, and the synodal way of Saint Teresa. I don't know what that
Well,
means,
that is,
but
yeah.
that was like a headline on the thing. Anyway, basically it sounds woke, and woke is not good, as
Yeah.
far as we know. So
No, we're in
you're
agreement about that. So
yeah, we're trying to
if
stay away from the woke. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And then another thing, I love your regional manager like explanation. That's like a perfect, like, exactly. I had been meditating on this once. It's like, what if Korans wasn't for contemplative nuns? What if this was Korans was for married Catholic women? And it's like, you cannot you cannot get married to your husband until you get out and go to some other state to these mom conventions, right? You got to go
Yeah.
and learn how to be, synodal way of motherhood, the critical race theory for moms, social equality for motherhood.
Yeah,
And
we're
even
gonna make sure that you're qualified to be a wife before
yes,
it doesn't matter that you love the guy. Just tick the boxes and fill out the forms and
like, this is more than like marriage counseling before you get married. This is like, they want to educate you on these liberal ideas, modernistic ideas, before you indoctrinate you basically into the new, religion of modernism, I guess you could say. And even like the mother prioress of the local monastery, like, Teresa of Avila had it, the nuns of this monastery vote for her among themselves, and she gets to be the mother like that. But Koran says, no, you can't be the mother until you go to classes on how to learn how to be a prioress. And we've never had that before. And to me, I was like, it's like if they told Catholic moms, you can't have babies until you go and get these classes, on liberal theology or something.
novices are required to go to these meetings before they're allowed to take vows. So can I just clarify on that? So if say a vocation like came to, your monastery when you were at Savannah, and they were like interested, and then they would kind of come and spend time with you.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that like they would have been living that contemplative life with you, and then because of Korans, they suddenly, in order to make vows, they'd have to like leave and kind of go out into the world, maybe for the first time in like months or something, and then
Yeah,
get like re-educated a little
yeah,
bit?
the understanding was they were having these like conventions, basically, it sounded like, and the novices were supposed to go to them, and it was kind of like college lecture hall type environment, and you're going to be lectured on the hidden contemplative enclosed life of Carmel outside, your monastery. And well, they're very, the Korans federated Carmelites are very liberal. Like I said, they're into all the wokeism that was
Mhm.
going on in the church. They're okay with like the the queers getting blessed, like whatever. And we are
Whatever goes, yeah.
traditional, we are just Teresa of Avila's nuns, we're not into any of that nonsense, to say the least. And we did not want to get indoctrinated or have to hear any of this stuff, because that's why we came into this monastery. We just wanted to learn about Teresa of Avila, her spirituality, her prayer, and learn from the sisters who came before us who are living that out in this monastery. And like, that was it. That's the whole premise of Teresa of Avila. So they're taking everything Teresa of Avila wanted us to live and be like, and throwing it out the window and saying,
Mm.
here's a brand new way we're doing it. And they've even said they're going to try and rewrite the Teresian constitutions according to Korans. And that's insane. Like,
So
what
that
Teresa
would,
of Avila wrote in like 1500 something is now going to be updated again.
and there's not really much you can do about that.
No, like we just follow through, Teresa of Avila's, writing. She has her original constitutions there, and that's what everyone has been following. Even after
Since then.
Vatican II, they did update those constitutions according to Vatican II. I would say that they're just as ambiguous and as any of the Vatican II documents, so you can still
Mm.
like live the traditional life anyway. But this Korans thing is like way more extreme, and they were very clear that things that Teresa of Avila wrote are not compatible with Korans. That is why they want to rewrite the constitutions. This
Mm.
is like everything against our our whole being, why we are in this vocation. This is like tearing apart God's revelation to Teresa of Avila of the Carmelite spiritual life and how to live it. They're just tearing that apart and saying, here's something else. And
Yeah,
I did
here's
not
something
make the
modern.
best of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is just, kind of the more I hear about it and the more I learn about it, it just seems that kind of so much in the, the modern church, and obviously like I'm a convert, so I don't know, as much as many people, and I'm no theologian, but that a lot of what the modern church is doing is basically saying all of these saints who are actually saints, they don't know as much as like we right now do. We
Mm-hmm.
right now who are not yet saints, still on earth, like we want to be more of the world. We'll just ignore all of that kind of wisdom, which was up until 5 minutes ago accepted as wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and accepted as the teachings of the church. It's like with the Latin Mass, like, for almost 2000 years, that was the Mass. And then
Yes.
suddenly, oh no, we'll come up with a new version.
Yeah.
That one's, we don't need that one anymore.
And how's that
Um,
going where the vocations are all wanting to go where there's Latin Mass and there's
yeah,
like practically
I
no
know.
one going to Novus Ordo? I'm just saying it wasn't like how it was back then where you had like floods of nuns and priests coming in and we got to build more monasteries to put them all. Now that's happening with the traditional Carmelites just because there's so few of us and there's
Mhm,
so many girls who want to like join, and it's
mhm,
like, okay, we need to, that's like this actual project that we have also came from that. Like, okay, we got nuns who need a monastery. There's all these girls who are like on waiting lists where they have to wait for a nun to die somewhere else so they can join, but
yeah.
they're also like 10 girls deep into this list. So
Mhm,
it's like it's such a great need. We have to do this. And so, what we're saying is we tried, we looked at other places, but they're so full. It's like God is like shaking us, like, build. So
yeah.
that's why we're not doing this out of little girly fantasies like, oh, let's build a monastery, that'd be fun. No, like, this is such a great need,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, as you said, it's not, I think people could, misunderstand and say, okay, well, of course you need somewhere else to go because, say, if your monastery was suppressed, but you're saying, well, it's
Mhm.
actually lots of the new vocations are specifically drawn to tradition, which I think for, my viewers wouldn't be a surprise, because I think a lot of young Catholics generally, and converts especially, are being drawn into the church by tradition, by the traditional
Yes.
Latin Mass, and all of that beauty that offers. So, I think you're 100% right. There was another story that I came across. I think is it Fairfields, Ohio?
Mm.
Um,
I think they're Pennsylvania.
I think
Fairfield is
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah, but they're also building this monastery.
Yes.
Kind of after we connected, I looked up kind of some other examples, and I think it's like across the US it seems to be happening, where, as you said, these, nuns are feeling this calling to like build something that is, in keeping with the church, but is counter to what the church is trying to be right now, and saying, well, this will last for hundreds of years. As you said, this isn't just for now, this is for vocations for many, many years to come.
Yes.
Um,
The little Marthas and Marys who, hundreds of years from now are going to be like how I was when I was 12 years old. I want to be a Carmelite nun. Okay, well, here's a monastery where you can be. So,
yeah. Is that how old you were when you discerned you wanted to
yeah,
be a nun?
I was 12 years old, and I actually had it really was a conversion experience. I'm a cradle Catholic, but the first time I saw a Carmelite monastery was the one that I joined, and I
Mm,
was 12 years old. I was going there with my family to help out in the garden to do some volunteer work, and I just saw the monastery, and my first thought was just, this is my vocation. Whatever is
mm.
behind those doors, that is it. And it was just so bizarre because I never thought about none. I'm just this little silly girl who I want to play video games and watch movies. That's my life. But it's just all started from there. And I remember because I was 12 years old and I was so nervous because I wanted to be a nun, but I didn't know how to tell anyone. I remember
Yeah.
I wrote a letter to my dad and I
Oh,
put it under his coffee cup or something. And I was like, I want to be a nun. Please give me your permission. I was really scared because I just didn't know about this. It was so new to me. And he read it and I was looking at him from behind the door and he just looked at me not until after graduation from high school. Okay. I was like, okay. I was like, yes, I can do it. I have this permission. Because Saint
yeah.
Therese had this whole long drawn out story about getting permission. I thought it was going to be really hard. So
Yeah.
anyway,
That's
so
what I was just thinking about when you were saying your age and how you're so young. I was like, oh, there's gonna be some drama here about no, you're not allowed.
there's actually a lot of drama in middle school and high school, for real. The moment I wanted to be a nun and it was 12 years old, this random kid in middle school asked me, dumb middle school, and I was like, I can't because I want to be with Jesus. And he just thought I was crazy and left. And I was like, well, now my whole high school life has been decided.
Yeah.
So I went through high school, hey Loretta, do you have a boyfriend? Yeah. I see him at church all the time,
Yeah. Yeah,
Jesus.
difficult for other people to understand if they didn't have faith or feel the same way. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be difficult actually, going through normal high school experience, knowing already
Yes.
that you want to be a nun.
My advice is don't tell your friends because they will tell the entire school, and then you're just, you want to have a nice, quiet, your
Yeah,
public school,
peaceful time.
don't tell your friends, guys, I'm gonna be a nun, and they just go and tell everybody, and now your whole high school is just everyone looking at you what's wrong with her? But at the same time, they're kind of just she wants to be Sound of Music or something. That's kind of cool, but I don't get it. Sister Act, please don't watch Sister Act. I never
No,
watched it, but don't.
no.
I'm not that. I am Sound of Music. I'm not Sister Act. Anyway, but yeah. So that was my early days, and then after high school, I really wanted to go straight into the monastery, but I had been volunteering at a local nursing home,
Mm,
and I was just so struck by taking care of the sick and the dying. So I wanted to learn nursing, particularly for when I'm in the monastery, because I was going into a monastery where there was a lot of elderly nuns. The vocations weren't there yet, not until we had Latin Mass. But anyway,
mhm.
I thought, oh well, when I get in there, I want to take care of them when they die. So I went into study nursing, and my forte, I guess you could say, is sick and dying. So, which is very good for a Carmelite nun because we're always meditating about death. So and suffering. So I understand very well about those things on a physical level as well. And from there, I learned from high school. I didn't tell a single soul I was going to be a nun in my liberal college nursing class. I was like, I'm not telling them. These people calling the baby in the womb a fetus. So I'm like, I'm not telling them. Anyway,
No.
and they just thought, I was going to go be a nursing home nurse or something. And I just went off and entered the monastery as soon as I passed my NCLEX on the first try. Anyway,
Amazing.
so that was my journey. And then I became a nun and everything was great, got my vows, and then they come in and say, oh, guess what? We're taking over your monastery.
Mm.
So after we got Latin Mass in, but don't worry, the Lord has plans. I can see that, because the doors have been opening for building this monastery, and we're going to just keep walking through them as the Lord opens,
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. I think that's, it's amazing how when, something, terrible happens, like the suppression of your monastery or, for the laity, like life changes and you can't see the way through, that then there always is, as you say, a door that opens, or many doors. Hopefully, and it sounds like kind of things are just progressing with the monastery project. Just on that, sister, because I'm kind of conscious of time and I want to make sure that you tell people a little bit more about that. I mean, I've heard you say it a couple of times about the 10 acres and keeping chickens, which speaks to me very much because I love my chickens, so I empathize. But could you tell us specifically, because I'm curious about this, why the monastery is called what it's called? What is it called and why? Where is it? And kind of how people can find out more about it, and also the ways that they can support the project. I'll link all of that as well, but just if you can run through those.
So we have 10 acres in High Springs, Florida, which is right outside of Gainesville. We're right down the street from the famous Florida Springs. So we're hoping this will be like a traditional Catholic retreat. Like people come to have mass with the nuns, Latin Mass, God willing. And, then they go down the street to the Florida Springs. So that's the environment. And we want to have chickens and hopefully a cow. I really want a cow so bad. And bees. I saw you have a new video about bees and beekeeping, and I love that because I was like, oh, good, because we are interested in doing that. So that's another aspect. And we're building to house 13 nuns. I'm pretty sure right now about 6 of us. We're solid 6, which is a great start for the nun part of the community. And then we have, a handful of girls and also some belated vocations who are interested in joining. So, but anyone who is interested in joining us, please feel free to contact us, because there's always room for discernment in this building and in this future monastery. And we're naming this monastery Our Lady Co-Redemptrix Carmelite Monastery, and the chapel will be called Our Lady of Sorrows Chapel. And the reason for these names is because we are very big on the Fatima message and the coming of the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And all of that really stems from the merit that she won at the cross, her silent witness offering up her son through her sorrows. And in doing so, she earned the title of Our Lady Co-Redemptrix. And St. Alphonsus Liguori, in his book, The Glories of Mary, really speaks on that. This is actually a very Carmelite title, because the hermits of Carmel from the time of Elijah were always praying for not just the coming of the Savior, the Messiah, but also the coming of the mother who would bring forth the Messiah. And in that sense, she's our co-redemptrix, because she brought about the salvation, which is Jesus, like from accepting in her fiat the incarnation, she is our co-redemptrix. Like that's the sense of that title and the merit that of her sorrows. And so that's a very Carmelite, because our life is basically to suffer and pray for the world, whether that's in big things like Teresa of Avila type suffering, or in the little way of Saint Therese, where you're just going to suffer, the splinter for the day. So,
Yeah.
and I'm doing this building project. We have a 501c3 nonprofit that we're saving and building with this the money that people donate to us, and it's called Habit Forming Sisters Corporation. And I do want to say, because I've never actually mentioned this before, it's called Habit Forming Sisters because one of the sisters had this idea with me a long time ago. She's a little bit crazy. She's very big on gardening, and she like knows all the plants, scientific names, whatever. She wanted to start a little LLC where she's like, we will plant tobacco. And I was like, what? She's like, hold on a second, let me finish. We're going to plant tobacco, not use it. I was like, okay. And we're going to sell it to tobacco companies, and it'll be called Habit Forming Sisters. And I was like, that's a nice idea. Let's put a pin in that and see what happens. So long story short, Monastery gets suppressed, and now we're doing a new building a new monastery. And I was like, oh, y'all, we need like a name for this nonprofit. She's like, oh, I know what we'll call it. And I was like, oh my gosh.
She just wants to use the name. It's a good name.
It was such a cute name. So I never get to mention it because I always forget. But now I'm starting to like make sure it's such a cute story. And she's
a lovely story.
Very melancholic. So the one time the melancholic's like really enthusiastic about something, like I gotta just let her have this. So we named it Habit Forming Sisters. And we have a website. On the website, you can donate via PayPal, or we also have Zephy. Zephy doesn't have fees, so that's really great.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a little Etsy shop. Now, if you don't like using Etsy, you can always write to us and say, oh, I'd like to buy the rosary or the whatever, because then that lets us know to like detract from our stock. And then you can donate online, and then we can send you whatever you're interested in. We also have Carmelite nun dolls, and I'll try to make sure we have a better picture, but they're actually like the size of like from the tip of your finger to your elbow. They're pretty big, chunky.
Okay. So what, like 30 centimeters or something?
Yeah, it's like a nice doll.
That's quite long.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know if it's that. I have to think. But anyway, it's like a nice chunky Carmelite nun doll, and they're selling out so much that we now have a back order list, so you can order that. You can also write to us at our P.O. box, and the address is on the website. You can send us donations there. And another thing is like, no donation is too small. We accept the widow's tithe. That the 2 pence, that means everything to us. Like, that is how we're going to build. We're going to build from all of your prayers and the little widow's mite. Like, that is how things get done by the grace of God. And share the website any way you want to. Please feel free. That also is such a big help. And we're so grateful to everyone who's gotten us this far and who's been praying for us. And we hope that this will get going even more sooner. We're getting into the permitting phase. So now we're like just going to spend the rest of this year and all of next year fundraising for the actual construction of laying the bricks and whatever. So and we'll be posting more details as we go along on the website. You can also subscribe for just a monthly email newsletter that we have. So we're doing everything that we can, including prayer. So
yeah, and I think also just it's great that you shared all those different ways that people can support. I like the idea of the dolls. I hadn't noticed those before on the Etsy shop, but I know that also when we were emailing back and forth, you mentioned that kind of when, not right now, but maybe when it comes to say the construction phase, you're very interested to kind of hear from people who are like craftsmen or tradesmen who might be willing to kind of like give some of their time or materials or kind of maybe consult with you to help bring it to fruition. So it's not just like if people can donate, which is obviously great and really important to get it to the construction phase, but also when that happens to be able to Catholic artists or people who can do carpentry and might be close to you already in the States, down in Florida. So
Yes, definitely. And even like some people, they've sent us like books, traditional classical books that will help, because we're in the monastery. The nuns usually have a room that's the designated library, so we can, not only like have reading material for our spiritual reading, but it's supposed to be safekeeping in case, the world blows up. Well, we
Yeah.
have the books, that's what the monasteries are for. We're supposed to safe keep the traditions, the customs, the prayer life, the books of everything of the Catholic Church. If you want to know, like, what does the Catholic Church believe and practice, you're supposed to go to a monastery and witness it. Like, this is it.
Mhm.
So that is like what monasteries are for. That's why Clorons is going clear away from that understanding. They're trying to like create this whole brand new idea of what a monastery is, and we're going to keep what Teresa of Avila was given by God to do, and that is to safeguard and safe keep tradition. So that's what we're
Mhm.
all about. We're not anything extreme. Our chickens are not sedevacantists. We're not. Our chickens and our cow is not schismatic. I promise. Like,
No,
and
it's
we
just, yeah, returning to tradition, as you said, and just safeguarding those, beautiful, traditions and teachings that have already brought us so many saints. Like we all benefit so much as
yeah.
Catholics from the teachings of those saints, whether we're nuns or whether we're the laity. They bring so much goodness, to the life of the church that definitely needs to be, protected, and safeguarded for future generations.
Yes, and I wanted to mention, like, in because when I'm going around with different people give us different ideas of, oh, look at this over here, and request like to do an interview, or look at these people over here. And I've been actually looking at traditional YouTube channels because I am trying to like do my part to find like the traditions of the church and say keep them. And I found your YouTube channel, and I thought you were like clear traditional Catholic all your life until you were mentioning your conversion. I was like, wow, she's so good. So anyway,
No.
your channel is like, I wanted to say that motherhood and having, your homemaking life, that is actually very Carmelite, like living the home life and homemaking, taking care of your children. You are like a mother superior, and you have your little community, and you're just trying to get everyone to heaven as best as you can, and discern with them where God is calling them to be in life. So like your whole channel is basically like, when I am able to watch like a couple videos, sometimes I'm like, this is the life of Carmel right here. So chickens.
Chickens, exactly. We've already got
Chicken,
so much in common. Chickens, the bees.
the bees. So
Yeah.
in a
Yeah,
sense, like
thank you for saying that.
motherhood and the nun hood is very similar. It's just acted out in different ways. So yours is more like you can physically see your children, and I like have spiritual children that I don't see, and just one day when I die and hopefully get to heaven, God will be like, oh, look at all these souls, those are your
Yeah.
children. And I'll be like, yay, fine.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
get
no,
to see
definitely.
the Lord.
That reminds me so much of what Saint Therese of Lisieux said about how she was like thirsty for souls. And
Mhm.
it just makes me think about like kind of as a woman, I think, and also like, for men, but I think especially for women, you have like this love that has to go somewhere. And it doesn't
Mhm.
matter whether you're a mother or, you're called to a religious vocation, like you give of yourself.
Yes.
And in your case, it's like praying for people that you don't know, you may
Mhm.
never know. But it's still like that kind of love has to have somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And like God calls us to do that kind of, without end. There's no end to,
Mhm.
the amount you have to love other people and kind of serve other people. So, I think that that's true. And that kind of leads me on nicely to saying that hopefully, we'll be able to do some other videos together, because we
Yeah.
discussed, talking about a bit more specifically about how people can incorporate kind of the teachings of Carmel and those elements of the Carmelite life into their
Yeah.
domestic church. And also kind of, we didn't talk about this before, but I think it would be really, if you'd be interested, it would be really powerful to maybe do a video about kind of tips for discerning a vocation. You
Yes.
know, because I really appreciated that you said that now in this interview, and also in the one that you did recently with the Fatima Center, about how women could reach out to you, whether they end up kind of, you know, joining your future monastery or not, doesn't matter. They still need guidance on discernment.
Yes.
And I think that would be, if you'd be interested, that could be a really
Definitely.
lovely video to do, kind of how would young women today be, you know,
Yes.
trying to
I
discern
have
that.
experience from the age of 12.
Yeah.
And when once you finally make your vows, you actually realize like, oh, I've been a nun since I was 12. Like I just started like wearing the outfit and living in the monastery finally. So even
Hmm.
like when you look at Saint Therese, like it's someone you like, oh, she was always a nun. Like she
Yeah.
finally, even her, like she's always been a saint. Like, so, and that's what we're trying to do. We're hopefully like one day we can, even like in spite of some people with our past, like, well, Saint Mary Magdalene sure had a past. So, but you can look at her like she's always been a saint after this
Mm-hmm.
conversion. So,
Hmm.
but yes, I
Yeah.
have experience.
Well, we've all kind of like, you know, lived a life, haven't we, before we, you know, end up embracing our vocation, whatever that might be, or like
Mhm.
finding faith. You know, I've certainly learned that through doing the kind of pen pal matching that I've been doing these last couple of weeks. Just so many women, so many different walks to faith, like so many different journeys towards tradition in the Catholic Church. Um, and just also beautiful, these different ways that people find God, and find the traditions of the church,
Like,
really.
nuns were not, especially Carmelite nuns, we're not supposed to be in a hurry. Like that's the thing my prioress is always telling me. She like I'm running down the halls trying to get things done. And she's like, you're breaking silence, number one. And number two, where are you going? Like we're stuck here forever. Where are you hurrying off to? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, okay. And then he's just like, so that's like I just have that in me now. Like, where am I going? Nowhere. It's fine.
Yeah.
You take your time.
You've got time. Yeah, see,
I
that
get
does that does make me think now that you're definitely right. Not that I've seen Sister Act, but you do sound a little bit like Maria then if you were running down the halls, because she does that, doesn't she? She's always like,
Yeah, that was kind of why like the prioress for her was just like, all right, maybe you should go take care of some children or something.
have a
Like
little
you're
break.
always telling you to stop. Maybe you need to go somewhere. So for her, we love her story, but I'm always like, oh, I wish she was a nun. So she would
Yeah,
have
you
been
know, it would have been a
a fun
nice
nun.
twist, wouldn't it, if it was like she went to spend time with the family and then she was like, actually, no, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go back to being a nun now. This was enough.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
like our vocation. I know we keep going, but our vocation is like Jesus is our bridegroom, and there's so many things that I can get into that for like another video. But it's just like as a woman, like you don't give up the love in your heart. Like you just put that all on Jesus. Like
Yeah.
Saint Therese was, she was very big on like being the little child in the father's arms. But there are
Mhm.
others, like Teresa of Avila is more like my bridegroom. Let me just fall in your arms. I'm dying.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no,
that's
I think some of those writings are just so beautiful. The imagery, like this is all new to me as well. Just, you know, the way that you know, different saints have described that relationship being a spouse of
mm-hmm,
our Lord. Yeah, it's just something that like I had never heard about before. But I love reading those because it's so emotive, and it is the way, you know, obviously like I'm, you know, married, and so I understand like a
mm-hmm.
little bit of that. I don't think actually that any marriage probably could be the same kind of love as you would feel. Um,
It's like, so
being,
like the best way we actually describe it, it's a chaste romance. Like you still
mm,
have all the love. Like Jesus's heart is literally on fire. Like
mm,
however passionate like the sisters feel like they are for Jesus, his heart is physically on fire. He's more than that for us. So, but like, our vocation is like trying to bring forth, instead of like mothers bring forth physical children, we bring forth spiritual children in the form of souls, or even like personally like our virtues. Like you
yeah.
actually have to like meditate sometimes on, I am so impatient, I need to take my little impatient virtue, I mean vice, and turn it into virtue. My little
Mm,
patience, I need to just
mm,
rock her sometimes and
mm,
calm down. So you do that, and that's how like you get the motherly, like aspect of your womanhood out, and it's useful again, and even like, I don't know, like for these young nuns, like, just like they're discerning, well, should I have gotten married or something? Like, I don't know, maybe because, we're still women. So we go through all feelings and whatever. And it's like, see Jesus, love him. And it's like, okay, that makes me feel better. Like, I'll just give your little feet and a sacred heart and your face all the kisses.
Yeah.
You just sometimes you just take an image of Jesus's holy face and you just kiss it and you're just like, okay, I feel better now. I'm in the right place. It's just,
Yeah,
women.
well, I think whether had a religious vocation or you were married, like it's no one ever says it's smooth sailing. You always kind of would have those moments where you're like, oh, like I think, well, it certainly wouldn't be in the case if you were in a religious life, you wouldn't be like annoyed with Jesus. But if you're married, then sometimes you get annoyed, and then you just look at them and you're like, but wait, you're amazing, and I married you, and you wanted to marry me, and that's really nice. We're in this together. We've got to kind of even out each other's edges. So yeah, always.
For me, it's like, well, if there's a problem in this marriage, it's probably my fault because it sure isn't your fault, Jesus. I know where the fault is now, but
it's such a good attitude to have. I think even in a marriage like mine, you just, what can I do? Like, because that's the only thing you can do. It can never be the other person. So it's just, how can you change?
You can still get angry at Jesus like a regular husband, like, why is this happening, blah, blah. But then you just have to sit there like, it's not his problem, right? It probably has to do with me because he's the perfect God.
Yeah.
So, and then you also like go in discernment, you go through like, well, I could like go find some random guy to get married to, or I can marry the man God, the God man who created these people. And that's so much better.
Yeah.
Well, no offense to getting married, but it's just
no.
For me, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to marry the God who created all these people. Like, thank you, like Jesus, for creating the man who created air conditioning. I'm gonna marry you for that. And so many things. Like,
so
that's
many
just
gifts.
so many things. That's how you should get it all out as a nun. Anyway, but those are maybe topics for other times. But I just wanted to share some of that.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, it's so lovely talking to you. I love it that you've got a good sense of humor as well. It's definitely something new for me. Like when you're not a Catholic, you hear all these kind of stereotypes. You just know the stereotypes of like, well, priests are just all kind of sticks in the mud, and the same with nuns. And then you start meeting these people, and you're like, they are so funny, and they love life, and they are just kind of full of like.
We got the ruler, and we're gonna beat you with the ruler. Put your hand out. We're gonna. Well, I do have a ruler, but I don't use it like that. Anyway,
good.
I've always been the very extroverted, loudmouth Carmelite nun. So it's kind of like, Jesus, are you sure about me and the Carmelites? And he's like, yeah, I'm sure, you'll be fine.
Yeah, but see, this is why, because he's going to need you to. There's going to, there was a need for a spokeswoman.
Helps the sisters to just get out there more, and then just to connect with like new Catholics and more Catholics, like just to let people know we're here and that we're praying for you, and we're really like supportive of like traditional motherhood. Like, you go and raise those babies. Good job. Like, that's our thing. We are here to pray for that. So we just want everyone to know that, we're here to support this. And we hope we can be a part of your lives spiritually and also physically with building this monastery. So.
It was amazing. Like, you'll realize this, like, if you get bees in the future, God willing, that just, they do so much work, and then you just have to like extract it and put it in a jar, and it's so delicious.
Yeah.
And they just do it naturally. I don't know how anybody could know about the way that bees work and not believe in God. Just a beehive by itself. I'm like, there's no way that this is just casual. This is a plan.
And that's very much like a Carmelite setting, because my prioress was so, like, she loved bees so much, and she would talk about how, like, the main workers of the hive are the women. Like, the men, they're just there to make more bees, but and they do some other things, but mainly it's like, there's so many aspects where it's like, it's the women who are like the actual, like, running the hive, and just like their silent way of like, they do their own work. They don't, they do help each other with things, but in general, you just see the one bee taking care of like its work and
Mm.
everybody else taking care of the, and that's like monastic. Like we're not all like running around screaming at each other with
You know,
fire.
you're in
Like
harmony.
we're in harmony with silence.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, bees are a little bit noisier, maybe.
Yeah, they buzz. That I think that's
Yeah.
like their prayer going up to heaven.
Yeah,
Their
maybe.
their,
Yeah.
their prayer buzz.
Constant prayer.
Constant
That's a
prayer,
nice thought.
constant buzz. And that's all
Yeah.
God hears. He just hears this chanting coming up from the beehive of the earth. Anyway.
I like this. This is working its way into a poem or something.
Oh dear.
In
Thank,
your spare time, you can start writing some poetry.
well,
All
thank
right,
you so
sister.
much, Elizabeth. It,
Has
like I
been a
said, it's
pleasure.
really, really a joy to talk to you. So
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet of you. Well, it's been so lovely to get to know you a little bit more.
Mhm.
And I will do my best to kind of edit this pronto
Yeah,
and send it over to you so we
yeah,
can put it out and people can
yes.
donate.
Thank you so much. This is the
That's all
best.
right. That's all right. It's been my pleasure. Well, take good care until I talk to you again.
Yes. God bless you.
God bless you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.